Okay, welcome back to Roll Mangging for our Call of Cthulhu campaign that is ongoing. We are having a blast with it. It's kind of funny because just like a couple months ago maybe, we were having a big debate about how often we wanted to switch between Shadowrun and Call of Cthulhu and all that, and we're like, maybe we should do like every other week or something like that, and now it's like, fuck is Shadowrun, right? That was kind of my ploy all along, was just be like, well, I'll let them talk about Shadowrun a little bit, but I know once we get into this, it's Cthulhu all day, every day. And so sure enough, Shadowrun's great. I'd love to get back to Shadowrun, but if I am having a blast DMing this shit, I gotta imagine it's pretty fun playing it, because I don't really enjoy DMing almost anything, so that's great. I don't want to stop DMing this, so it's very good, very good. Alright, so last session was a doozy. Controversially so to myself, I suppose. I had my regrets about it, but I also had the pros about it that I liked. But we had to soldier on, we had to get past that craziness, and we had to get back into the actual campaign as written a little bit. Not completely, of course, because it's never going to go as written, but we'll get back more into the fold. Alright, so this was kind of a weird session as far as players. Obviously, if you remember, Olaf dropped out completely. He's not there. Reefly missed the whole session completely. We thought he was going to be late, but he missed it completely, so I'm sure he's going to be watching this. He was bringing in a new character anyway, so that's like the perfect time to miss a session, I suppose. Rather than just be like, oh, your character was passed out for a few days. Yeah, so it's better, I guess, to do it now. Then Ziggy was there for like an hour and 15 minutes, and then he left for like an hour and 45 minutes for dinner. It was weird. But anyways, so we started out the day of February 12th, 1925, which was a Thursday. And so Sancho is Ren's new character, the luchador. You know, he was present last session, but we had to bring in a new character in the form of Ed. He was bringing in a new character named Maximilian Pegasus, which apparently is a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. I think almost every one of Ed's characters is some sort of reference, so I just kind of give up on that. And Ed thought they were doing their Numenera shit or something this week, so he didn't make the character, so he had to do that on the fly. And Maximilian, he wanted to... I had this deal, this offer, to one player for one character. Like, it's not one character per player. This is it. Probably for a while. Is they can come in, if they come in with a kick-ass backstory, they can have spells, like, coming into it. Anybody can get spells if they read the right tomes and memorize the right shit. They can get spells throughout the course of the game. But I was going to let one player come in with spells. And so I really shouldn't have allowed this, but I mean for this character, because he completely forgot. He didn't do anything for the session. So he didn't come up with some written backstory, which is what I wanted. He just kind of told it to me, and I can't really remember what it was. Something like his girlfriend or his wife died, something like that, and so he went to Egypt to find some ancient ritual or something, anything he could find to bring her back so he could see her again, and he had a game with death or some shit. He didn't say death, it was a game of something, but it's usually death, right? And he lost the game, and so the dude ripped out his eye and put an object in there or something, and the object is magical. I don't really understand, because if he lost the game, why would the dude give him anything? I don't know. I didn't get it, so he's just like, yeah, so I guess, any lame spell you can give me that would relate to the eye or vision or whatever. And so it was unfortunate because I was kind of on the spot right there, which is why I wanted the backstory in advance, so I could really pick a spell or a couple spells that really were fine-tuned, and, you know, or I could come up with my own. And so I was like leafing through the book right then. I was like, okay, what fucking spell should... I don't know, his eye? I don't know. And I could have come up with Heat Ray or something. You could shoot out a Heat Ray out of his eye, but it would have to be lamer than that because he didn't put much effort into it. I don't know. And so then I saw, it wasn't mind control. It was something similar to mind control. I mean, it is mind control. I just don't remember what it was called. And so you spend like 8 magic points, and he's got 10. And so you recover 1 magic point per hour. So basically, he would need like a full rest. He could do it about twice a day, roughly. And so 8 magic points, 1d8 sanity every time he wants to use this. That's the real big toll. 1d8 sanity, that's big. But, you know, if your characters are just expendable and you don't give a shit, you could accomplish great things with this. And so you match this, you match your magic points against their magic points. Now, nobody I'm talking to here is going to really know or be able to specify. I would love a specification on this rule, because I couldn't figure out whether it was your max magic points or your current magic points after you cast the spell. And so I figured if it was your current ones after you cast the spell, this spell sucks ass. Because that would be like his 2 magic points against everybody else's like at least 10. And so I was like, nah, that's a shit spell. Nobody would use that. That's dumb. So I went with your max magic points. And I think I'm going to just rule that for all of them. And so for some characters that could be really OP, but then that's fine. So you match your 10 points or whatever, your max magic points against their, whatever their magic points is at, generally their max. And I'll say their max. And so basically it's power versus power, and I'm going to just rule it like that. But anyways, so if you succeed, you control them for 1 round, and they will do pretty much anything you want. Like, it even says they'll commit suicide or like kill their best friend or whatever, anything you want for 1 round, which is about 5-6 seconds. So that's really good. If you fail, they automatically know that you just tried to mind control them. Whether they're just some average old lady, she will just boom realize this schmuck just tried to control her mind. And so that's a good spell to throw to your players, because it's not massively OP, because most of the really dangerous things in the campaign have a shit ton of magic points, a shit high power. So you're not really going to go up to, Makunga and convince him to just kill himself. You can certainly try, but it's unlikely. But you can accomplish many small things with that. You can make the guard open the door or whatever. You can do all sorts of stuff with that for 1 round. Now the problem is, it's 1 round. And so afterwards he's going to be like, who are you and why are you on the other side of this door? You could say, let us through this door and don't question us, or something like that. It's basically just, the Jedi thing. And so I'm really happy with that selection. The only problem is it's Ed that gets to use it. So I may throw in, the beautiful thing is this campaign is one of the best ever written, but it's also you can add stuff to it at any time. So I can just say you find a scroll and it's got this spell and you can learn the spell. If I really wanted to do that. Now there are scrolls that have spells and blah blah blah. Okay. After that lengthy discussion. So yes, Maximilian coming in, he has this magical eye that can do that ability. With a cost. Which is the beauty, of course. This is always the cost. Okay, so Reginald gets together with Sancho and Maximilian. Charlie was also not there. Charlie was not there for about an hour. So they had to do this without Charlie. And so they begin discussing the current events and what to do and what's their plan and all that. And Reginald was really focused on the Penhew Foundation. And so you know, they discussed what they knew about the Penhew Foundation, what they knew about Gavigan, and what they wanted to do with it. They knew that he had these letters, these personal letters from Penhew from the expedition, and Gavigan was reluctant to give them up. And they also knew that Charlie had spotted like a false panel in his office. And, you know, that could lead to anywhere or anything. So, and also Gulk told Reginald at one point that he's like, don't forget the Penhew Foundation or something like that. So Reginald knows there's something up there. He wants to get in and find it out. But he doesn't want to, like, be forceful or, you know, do anything terrible or whatever unless they got a bigger group. A.K.A. Charlie. So he and Maximilian decide to pay the Penhew Foundation another little visit and see if they can find out anything more. Maximilian can read Egyptian hieroglyphics because... yeah. Well, because he spent time in Egypt, I know. But because they may go to Egypt, and so yeah. I don't really have a problem with that. I don't care. And so they go to the Penhew Foundation. They look around the public exhibit again. Just because, again, Maximilian has a skill. He has points in Egyptology and hieroglyphics. And so anything Egyptian, here, look at it. What is it? What is this? Is this a cult thing? And so there's nothing in the public exhibit, of course. And so then they go down and they want to speak to Gavigan again. And so they're sitting in the waiting room, and Gavigan comes out, and they introduce, and they go back into the office. This was a very short conversation, mostly because of Ed. They just immediately started discussing the letters. And Gavigan's like, I don't intend to hide any information from you. It's just that these are personal letters between Sir Aubrey and myself. They don't contain any real records of the expedition. Those were all lost. So I just don't wish to share, you know, these personal things with outsiders. Well, with anybody, really. And so then Maximilian butts in. He's like, well, would you care for a wager through a card game? Like, what? And so Reginald, like, persuaded Gavigan. And so he's like, how about... Reginald's like, I have a large sum of money that I could offer you as a donation if you offer up these letters in this game of cards. And be like, what dude would do that? Like, what upstanding gentleman that runs this foundation would wager his personal letters on a card game? Like, who are these people? Like, he knows something is up. Nobody's this interested in personal letters. And so, Gavigan is, of course, independently wealthy, regardless of the foundation. He has no interest in... He's richer than Steinway. So he has no interest. He's not going to give up these personal letters just for this. And so then, they mention the scepter. This elusive scepter. And they're like, we could donate this scepter to your exhibit if you put up these letters. And Gavigan's like, I still have yet to see this scepter, so I'm afraid not. And so, man, Maximilian said some shit. I don't remember what it was. It was dumb. What did he offer? I don't remember what he offered, but he, like, one-upped it, and it was really dumb. And so Gavigan's just like, I think it's best that you gentlemen leave if this does not have anything to do with some official business. And so Reginald had to apologize and be like, we'll be on our way. Okay. And so they left, and they were like, we pretty much have to break in at night at this point. You know, we got to get in there. There's the letters. There's too much going on there. We can't find anything out. And to be fair, that was a pretty dumb plan of just walking in there and offering, you know, making this wager on a card game. That was just... Okay. And so... I think that was... My notes are really sparse. I've been really terrible about keeping notes now. I've just been having too much fun DMing. I should keep better notes. Like, it's just like one line for each day. Okay. So Charlie comes in at some point along this, and so they discuss with him what's going on, and they discuss this plan to break into the Penhue Foundation and all that. And Reginald just finishes discussing their intricate plans for breaking into the Penhue Foundation that night. And then Ziggy's like, oh, well, I have to go to my cookout now, so I'll be back in like an hour and a half. We're just like, fucking great. So they discussed this a little bit longer, and they were like, well, we don't want to do this without Ziggy. So we have another lead, though. Charlie brings up this, well, they bring up this other lead about this Blue Pyramid place. I think it was Sancho that brought it up. This Blue Pyramid Club in Soho, that apparently a lot of these victims of the murders, they frequented this place. And so... I'm just looking at my dates. I don't know if this is all correct, but it might be correct. Okay. So they were like, well, we could go there tonight. It was like 3 p.m. or something when they were discussing this. We could go there tonight and just go in as customers and check the place out. Charlie was very against this idea. I think he has nightmares about the Juju House and about New York and stuff. So he's very wary of going to any place, and just checking it out. Fat Mabel's and just, And so he calls up Mickey and talks to Mickey a little bit. Mickey Mahoney at the Scoop, if you remember. And he asks Mickey if he could help the group out by maybe get some information from Scotland Yard about these murders that are going on. And really, realistically, I should have just said that, the Scoop published this article about the murders, so you'd think that they would be doing everything they could, legally or illegally, to get information already. But for the sake of the game, which I do that a lot, I was like, yeah, I'll do what I can. He said it gruffer than that, but you understand. And so they were like, well, let's just wait tonight, and we'll not do anything, and we'll just wait to hear from Mickey. So they get a call from Mickey the next day around 6 o'clock or something, and Mickey says that he did get some information, not a tremendous amount than what they already know, but the files apparently that Barrington had at Scotland Yard mention a guy by the name of Tufik al-Sayed. And apparently the police interviewed him a couple times, and they staked out his spice shop in Soho, and he apparently led some expeditions into Egypt for the Penhue Foundation, but they couldn't find any real link between him and the murders. And so they appreciated the information. That was a nice hint. Another lead. And they were like, all right, well, I guess we'll go to the Blue Pyramid tonight and just, hang out as customers. So they go to the Blue Pyramid, which is a very Egyptian place. They've got belly dancers, Egyptian food, singers going on, singing in Arabic and all that, very themed place. And of course there's a lot of, men of Egyptian descent hanging out there. So they go in, they get some drinks. Charlie, I'm not sure what Charlie was really attempting to accomplish here. There was something going on, and I'll talk more about this in Secrets of Role Mangging. He could have gotten further than he did, but he tried to dance with one of the belly dancers, and he asked her, or he said to her that he's new in town, he's looking for some fun. And she said that the brothel's down the road, and he's like, babe, you know what I mean. And I, as a DM, did not know what he meant. I don't know what that... Like, you're dancing with a woman saying you're looking for fun. Like, me, in my fragile uneducated mind thinks coitus, but apparently Charlie Chalk meant something else. So I still don't know, so I just had her not respond, and she just kept dancing. And so he's just like, get this bitch away from me. I don't know what he meant. And so they're sitting there, and they see this big fat dude come in, well-dressed. And he sees the chicks hanging on him, and he's putting pound notes in their straps and shit. He's talking to the bouncers and the bartenders, so he seems like a big deal. And so I think Charlie goes up to him and asks if he owns the place. He says, yes. Like, well, it's a very nice club. We don't have anything like this in the States, or blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, thank you. And that was pretty much it. That's all he said to him. And so they're still hanging around, and they're like, what are we doing here? What are we trying to find out? And so I think they were eventually like, we got to get some information about this. You know, we need, something's going on here. Let's find it out. And so Charlie goes back up to him and mentions that he has this Egyptian artifact that he's going around and seeing if, you know, anybody from that country, I guess, is interested in, or, you know, knows anything about it. And it sounds real shady. And the guy, the owner, he's not incredibly interested. And he tells him, I think, to go to the Penhew Foundation, because they're the expert. And Charlie Chalk says, you know, he doesn't want to deal with all those suits and, you know, all that official stuff. He wants, you know, the man on the street's opinion, or something like that. That he probably made it sound better than that, because that was probably offensive. The man on the street to this club owner. But he rolls his persuade or something, and the guy's like, very well, we can examine this. And Charlie tries to persuade him to let his buddies come along. And he didn't work. So, because why would he need his buddies? He's just showing this thing. And so they go into a back office, and the owner has one of his large bouncers come in, Bruce. And so Charlie whips out the scepter that he got, you know how, the scepter's still around, so whatever. If you don't remember, the scepter they got off of Makunga's body. It's made of some strange wood. It's got like a upside down ankh on it, and it's got Egyptian hieroglyphics on it that read Nyambe, thy power mine. And it's African in origin, not Egyptian, which they seem to keep just because it's got the hieroglyphics on it, which me as a DM confuses the hell out of me. I don't know why this exists. It's an African scepter with Egyptian hieroglyphics that reference an African god. I can kind of understand its purpose, and I think those that watch Secrets of Mangging kind of understand its purpose. Not its purpose, but I don't know, its existence. It's just a very strange item, and they make a big deal out of it. I can't believe we're still discussing this damn scepter. But we are. And so the guy, the owner, looks at it, and he reads off the hieroglyphics. Even though by the campaign book, he cannot read hieroglyphics, but I forgot to check. And I was like, oh yes, Nyambe, thy power mine. And so Charlie's like, well, what do you think it's worth? And the guy looks at it. And he looks up and he's like, well, how about I keep this scepter and Bruce doesn't rip off your other arm? And so Charlie pulls out his piece. I'm like, oh God. This is the reason you deny them all firearms. And so Bruce is definitely standing there thinking about stopping this. Like, he's thinking about just rushing and breaking the guy's arm or something. But he's hesitant because, you know, the gun is on his boss. And so Charlie's like, how about you just let me have my scepter, I'll go on my way, forget this ever happened. So the owner, he thinks about it for a moment, and then he pushes the scepter, or rolls it across the table. And so he has Bruce like grab the scepter and put it in his bag, and he has them like back up into the corner, and then he steps out. He goes to the group, he's like, we should get out of here. And they all look over and they see the owner like talking to some of his bouncers and pointing at the group. And they're like, yeah, we should get out of here. There was some resistance, a little resistance, because especially from Ed, who's like, hey, I'm not with them. But the big ass bouncers are coming their way, and so eventually they're just like, all right, let's get out of here. So they go out of the club, and the bouncers follow them. And then they realize that none of them have a car, which is funny. That is going to continue to probably be a problem for the rest of the game. As, you know, you just have these characters that, you know, come in by boat and don't live there and have all these arrangements and all sorts of shit, and nobody ever owns a vehicle. Occasionally you'll have one that owns Reginald owns a vehicle. But yeah, they didn't have a vehicle. They all came by cab. And so the bouncers come out of the club, and they all have like little blackjacks in their hands. And the group is like, you know, I think Maximilian was like, I'm going to run to the nearest police station. And this was then started a little argument where we came to the conclusion that how in God's name would he know where the nearest police... He hasn't been in London in 4 years. And so he had like, I gave him like a halved idea roll, or a half knowledge roll or something like that, which was generous of me. I mean, maybe I'm ignorant, but I don't know where the police station is in my own town that I've lived in for 24 years. So, I don't know. It's just not something I care to know. Like, who cares? So, why would he know where a police station is in the district of London? I don't know. Anyways. So, he didn't know where it was, and so they were like, oh shit. And so they finally decided to just stand their ground. And so, like, Charlie takes out a cigarette, takes a big drag, throws it down, and he's like, anybody that crosses that is going to get their shit fucked up, or something like that. He said something badass. And so, the three goons all charge him. He pulls out his piece, he fires off a round. I think it like clips his shoulder or something like that. And so then starts a brief brawl with these thugs. And Maximilian has never been in a fight in his life. Charlie is kind of a ragged shred of a man, but he's got his gun. And Sancho is like a combat beast, because he's got 99 dodge, 99 grapple. But the grapple rules suck ass. Like, I really need to just house rule all that shit. They're terrible. It's so damn confusing. Like, I guess it shouldn't be OP. But I don't know. Like, the rules, like, if he just wants to suplex somebody, me trying to figure out the rules for that is crazy. I guess, well, it boils down to the resistance table, which is not the greatest thing in the world. But I guess it would be his strength versus the other guy's size, and then if you succeed, it does a certain amount of damage. I don't know. It's very confusing. And so it's much better if you're just a martial arts master that has 99 kick and 99 martial arts. You'll wreck cultist shit with that. But yeah, grapple is very confusing. But he's powerful either way. And so they shoot and kill one of the bouncers. They knock out one of the other bouncers. And the last guy runs back into the club and they let him go. They hear sirens and they get out of there. So that's what happened. More blood on Charlie's hands. And so, the cops found out about this. This is where, doing that, like that scene right there, actually doing the scene is not difficult to DM. That's just whatever. The aftermath in a campaign like this, very difficult to DM. Because it's like, how how involved do you make the world? You know, the players are, of course, the center of the campaign, but there's a whole world around them as well, you know? So it's like this Abdul guy. He would press charges. You know, he'd try to find out these guys that murdered one of his men and disrupted his evening and all that. And so the police should be on the lookout constantly for these guys. There should be posters and, you know, there should be sketches or whatever. And I'm pretty sure he introduced himself as Charlie Chalk. Now, he's not a resident of London or anything like that, but, you know, anywhere he went and he introduced himself as Charlie, like, it's complicated, right? Too complicated. Like, I think there are DMs that would try to be ultra realistic, and they would be keeping track of this every single moment. Like, who are the police looking for, all this kind of information, the legal stuff that's going on, and just be on the ball for everything. And then there are DMs that I think are very lax, way more lax than even I am, where they're just be like, yeah, screw it, you know, you all got guns, you all got passports, who cares about any of that? You know, I made a deal, you know, I made a thing of that passports were necessary, and, you know, that Mifune got tied up and all that and stuff. But I think I'm kind of somewhere in the middle where I just kind of want to keep things going along. I don't want to be hung up about stuff too much. And, you know, the police are always present, and if they do anything overt, you know, and they get caught by cops, I'm going to go through with that. But if it's just something like this where, you know, they get away, I'm probably not... I know this is delving into secrets roaming. God. I'm probably not going to make a big deal out of it, just because in a campaign like this of cosmic horror and, you know, intrigue and mystery across continents, having the crew sit in prison in London is just like... that's boring to me as a DM, and so I got to DM it how I find fun, but... we're getting way off track, so let's move along with just events. Okay. Alright, so February 14th, 1925, Saturday. This is where Ziggy pretty much came back. And so I really need to take better notes. Because I guess I'm really just covering the big points. But, like, they break into the Penhew Foundation at night. What the hell happened during the day? Oh, okay. No, I remember now. Why would I not write that down? What the hell's wrong with me? That was a big deal. Okay, so... yes, if you watch Secrets of Roll Mangging, you know about Reginald's deal with Gulk. If you didn't, then, well, I don't know. I'll just explain events and you'll be confused. Okay, so Reginald, it's the day of the deadline, and so he keeps hearing, like, tick-tock noises in his head and stuff like that, and he keeps images of clocks and shit, you know, time's ticking and blah, blah, blah. And so at, like, 10 o'clock or something like that night, maybe it was earlier than that. It was pretty late. No, actually, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was like 5:30. Yeah, because I think he told the secretary they're closing an hour early or something like that. So yeah, it was probably like 5:30-ish. And he goes around Soho, and he's driving around with Stefan, his butler, his servant. And he finds a homeless guy on the side of the road in like an alley. And he rolls down his window. And he offers the guy... like food, drink, and money to come with him. And I'm just like, this is the most shady shit I've ever heard of. But he rolls like a 7 on his persuade or some crazy shit. And so he's just like, oh, alright. And so the homeless guy goes with him. And Reginald gives him some money. And he takes him back to the Steinway Hall. And he gives him some whiskey. Some nice whiskey, and he tells him that he's got the chef preparing his dinner right now, and he says, well, would you like to look at some fine art while you wait? I recently picked up this piece, and it's quite magnificent. And the homeless guy's like, sure, I guess. And he goes over, and he looks at this fine painting. Like, oh, the colors seem to be swirling and the water's rippling and this is beautiful. And then, oh, it's much more exaggerated than that during the session, but you understand. And so he gets sucked into the painting and devoured. And Reginald lost some sanity. Because he just killed a homeless guy by horrible means, you know. It wasn't like he just killed him in his sleep or something. He listened to him be pulled into an ancient time and eaten by serpent people. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. And so he lost some sanity, but he made the deadline. And that's all that matters. And so, that night then, around 1 a.m. or something like that, they all, the three of them, minus Reginald, arrive at the Penhew Foundation. And it was around this point that they got very wary of being tailed by cultists or whatever, you know, being watched. And so they went through some precautions, and it's, you know, if you go through some precautions, that's good. You know, if you don't go through anything and you don't really mention it, you probably assume you're constantly being watched, because it's easier for me. But if you make a big deal about it and you go through a lot of measures about it, you know, that's good. That's good. Do that forever. So the three of them arrive at Penhew Foundation. They scope out the place. It's like 1 a.m. The place is pretty locked up tight. They go around to the back. They see that there's a loading area, and you know, where trucks would back up and unload some shit. And so they see the door, the loading dock door, has some big chains across it and a big padlock. And so Charlie tries to lockpick it. He's got a 1% chance, which basically means you've never picked a lock in your life. You have no idea. You're just kind of hoping something works. That's what 1% means. And you get 1% in a few skills. Like, you get 1% in astronomy. So basically that just means you get a lucky guess, maybe. Like, what does this star alignment mean? We're like, oh, well, that means, aha! So basically, Charlie just went up with, like, a screwdriver and was just like, I don't know. And so none of them know how to lockpick. And, you know, it's kind of funny. I think we talked about this, like, last session or something, where the players, their character skills never really line up perfectly. You know, like, everybody should have spot hidden, everybody should have listen, everybody should have probably some points in dodge, credit rating is good. You know, there is a basic list of skills that really every character should be somewhat proficient at. But then there's all these other skills that you may need once every other session, or once every 3 sessions, or even that. Locksmithing, astronomy, accounting, archaeology, drive auto, operate heavy machinery, you know, all sorts of these little skills. And so in a perfect world, in a perfect group, everybody would have, you know, perfectly mesh, where you'd have the astronomy, locksmith, heavy machinery guy, and then you'd have the psychology, accounting, Egyptology guy. You know, you'd have this perfect mesh, but it doesn't really happen, and so there's plenty of things that the group just has no idea how to do, and in this case, locksmithing is one of them. They also had this problem at the Shipley house, but they had good old Gulk there. But they don't like Gulk anymore for some reason. And, okay, so they try and break this open with the crowbar. Charlie basically remembered he picked up a crowbar way back when he was introduced with the deadlight. There was a crowbar outside of that one house that he picked up, and he forgot about until now. And ordinarily I would call bullshit, but I remember him doing it. And so I was like, alright, that's amazing, so sure. And so it just didn't really work, though, in this situation. Breaking the lock with the crowbar, like, they couldn't get leverage because it was just a padlock hanging on chains in the middle of the door. Like, in my head, it just didn't make sense, so no, it didn't work. And so I'm like, oh shit, we're not going to get in this way. So they go back around to the front of the place, and they see there's some big plate glass windows. And they thought about prying the window open, but like, it was literally like flush with the wall. Like, there was no way for them to do it. like they were thinking it was like just an openable window, but this is too fancy a place for that. And so they see like a light inside the building, kind of like bobbing down the hallway. They're like, oh shit, and they duck. I think one of them was about to run. I think Charlie was about to run. Oh shit. But they duck down, they just see like a flashlight waving around. And so I think at this point Maximilian just gets kind of sick and tired of waiting or something. Like, they weren't even there for that long. And so he walks up and just starts knocking on the front door. And I'm like, oh god. And he was serious, he did it. So, okay, the other two were like, what the oh my god. But he does it, and so the security guard comes up and he's like, what do you want? And so Maximilian, of course, gives the lamest lie in all of lies, and he says that, do you have a toilet in there? I need to go to the bathroom. And so the guard says, of course, piss off. And so at this point, Maximilian wants to stretch his magical skill. So he mind controls the guy. He loses... He mind controlled the other, like last night, when he was playing card games with Charlie. He mind controlled Charlie successfully, just to make Charlie forfeit the card game. Because according to Maximilian, he never loses a card game. So he lost sanity for that. He didn't know that he was going to lose sanity for that. I didn't tell him, but he did. And it was funny. Anyways, he mind controls the security guard. He loses 5 sanity. So he had to roll his idea to see if he goes temporarily insane, which would have been hilarious. Because he still would have mind controlled the guy, but then when he was supposed to, he would have like had to give him a command. He would have just been like, no! It would have been funny. I probably would have just had them both sitting there screaming at each other. Yeah, but it didn't happen. It wasn't meant to be. So he does not go temporary insane. He does lose 5 sanity, though. And he does successfully mind control the guy. And what he does, he could have said, let us in and don't question us. He could have done that. No, he went a different route, though, my friends. He tells the guy to smash his head through the glass door. And so, of course, the guy does it. And then he immediately shakes it off, and he's like, what the... What? And so he swings at Max. And Ed was very confused about this. He was like, why would he swing at me? I don't understand. I didn't do anything to him. And I'm just like, this is just a dumb, angry security guard. You already pissed him off by asking a dumb question. He told you to piss off. And then he suddenly finds his head through the glass window, or glass door. He's going to assume you were doing something. You know, he doesn't know what happened, but you're standing right there. He's pissed off. His head just went through a glass door. He's going to take a swing at you. It's not like you seem like some upstanding citizen that he doesn't want to upset. You seem like a dumb shit. He's going to take a swing at you. So he takes a swing. I think he hits him. Not from, well, maybe. I don't remember. But anyways, a scuffle between the two commence. Charlie does not want to do anything. He's just watching. And Sancho's like, well, it was a fight, a one-on-one fight. I didn't want to interfere. So the two of them fought. The big, angry security guard and the magician. He's a magician. Or he owns like a magic company or whatever. He's a business owner who's never been in a fight. The two scuffle. And it was going okay until the security guard rolled a 1 on his punch. And 1 being a crit. Like an absolute crit. Where it's just like, fuck you. It's a fucking crit. I still do allow dodge rolls, though. Just because. I probably shouldn't. But since it's a rule now, we allow dodge rolls for crits. He failed his dodge roll. So I was like, alright, fuck it, it does max damage. So you take 7 damage. He goes down to 2 HP, which is unconscious. So literally, this security guard is just like, I'm done with this. And he Superman punches, and down goes Maximilian. Just, yeah. And so now they're like, oh shit, we should get involved. And so Sancho rushes forward and tries to tackle him, bull rush him through the door. But the security guard is just like, and just resists. And so the scuffle between the three of them commences. It goes on for a little while. It's kind of humorous that they couldn't put this guy down. He was already not in great shape. He was at like he was at like 6 health when they came into the fight. And so they eventually Sancho like smashes him through the door successfully, knocking him out. So now they have a big broken front door to the Penhew Foundation, and they have 2 unconscious guys laying there. So they drag both of them in and put them right there. They shut the doors as best they could, and they're just like, shit. And so Charlie rushes into the office, and he sees that the door to Gavigan's office is locked. And this is not a glass door, this is a solid-ass door. And it's actually kind of interesting. I should have made the front door way tougher than I did. But again, it's just one of those things you were just like, fuck it, go with it. In the book, it says exterior doors are all strength 50. And interior doors are all strength 30. So I was very lenient on the front door, but I was not going to be lenient on this door. And so, like, what that means is a strength 30 door means to just break it down. To break it down, to have a 50% chance to break it down, you need to have a 30 strength. That's how the resistance table works. That's incredible, man. That's a really solid door. Because, like, a regular door, or even like a nice, thick, heavy wooden door, I can kick down pretty easily. I mean, I've done martial arts and I'm a bigger guy, I know, but I don't have a 30 strength. That's inhuman. And so this must be a pretty damn solid metal door. And so you think about that and you're like, okay, how is one person supposed to do that? You know, that's impossible. Like, having a 20 in a stat is like superhuman. Like, that's, well, I was going to say Spider-Man would have a 20 strength. Maybe that's accurate. Maybe slightly higher than that. I don't have a chart or anything like that. But you're not going to find a normal guy as a 20 strength. Because I think I guess 18 is the highest you can actually have as far as rolling. And that's pretty damn high. But you're like 1% at that point. You have to be a bodybuilder or something. Like, you have to be like pulling trucks or some shit. Trains, I don't know. That's really high. So 20 is beyond that. You can't naturally get a 20 strength. And so you either have 2 people do it, because 2 people with 15 strength, I would give the same chance. I probably shouldn't, but because you know how logistics work. But yeah, again, this keeps devolving into Secrets of Roaming, and I feel I'm just supposed to tell the facts of what happened. Damn it. See, now I know what Spoonie feels like. Anyways, and then the other way, which they finally discovered, was the crowbar. And so I tried looking anywhere for stats and like, okay, how does using a crowbar affect, you know, doing strength-related tasks? And I should probably look a little deeper, but I don't know if it says anywhere. So I just said, fuck it, it adds 15 to your strength for leverage purposes. And so this gave Sancho, who has a 16 strength, I believe, it gave him a 45% chance, or 55% chance, yeah, 55% chance of opening the door. And so he failed. Charlie failed a couple times because he's got 1 arm, so he's got like 9 strength. He's trying to just, he couldn't, he had like a 5% chance. And that was me being generous. And so then Reginald finally shows up. He goes through the broken door. He sees the unconscious bodies, and he walks in. He sees these 2 guys messing with a crowbar. And so then Sancho gives it one last attempt. He's like, "Bah!" And he cracks the door open. Just mostly because I was like, fuck it, just get in there. So they get in there, and Charlie immediately starts looking for this panel. He's like, oh, it's got to be here. So he eventually finds it. He tries kicking it a couple times, and then he puts his foot through it. Reginald goes through Gavigan's desk, and he finds some accounting information. The book does not detail what's in Gavigan's desk, because I was like, screw it. Why would he have accounting information in his desk? Surely he's got people in charge of that, but whatever. Give them something. Because you never want to hear, yeah, I searched the desk in the guy's secret office. You find nothing. Like, ugh. So I gave him that. So they eventually, after much humor, they slide open this hidden panel. And they go through. And they enter into the storage room. And there's all sorts of boxes and crates and all furniture all around. And then there's like this sarcophagus lying there. And, no, screw it. I'm just going to tell events, alright? I'm just going to get through this. I'm not... Secrets of Romaine, that's what this is all for. Okay, so they look around the sarcophagus quite a bit. Some spot hidden rolls succeed, a couple of them. And they eventually discover that the eyes of the sarcophagus can be pressed. And so they, like, press both of them, and the sarcophagus... Oh, they try moving it as well. To move the sarcophagus, strength 50. You need 6 people of all moderate strength to have an attempt at doing this. They all tried, the 3 of them. They couldn't do it. It didn't, like, I don't think they even had a chance to do it. And so, but they press the eyes, the thing like slides across, and there's a set of steep stairs going down. They're like, oh shit! And this is what every Call of Cthulhu player just loves. Secret stairs. So they go down there, and they discover this isolated little enclosed room that's filled with just all sorts, like, half of it is literally just like an emergency bunker. You know, with all sorts of the supplies, a bed, desk, chairs, food, water, bullets, you know, all that kind of stuff. The other half is weirder. There's artwork, there's crates, there's a bookshelf, there's like this little chest, there's like a stone jar, there's all sorts of stuff. Fat loot, yo. And so Reginald immediately runs to the bookshelf. And on the bookshelf are 4 books. Well, there's a bunch of books, but 4 notable books. And it's like, how are you supposed to know these are notable ones compared to the others? And it's just like, screw it. These are the notable ones. And it had volumes in German, French, Russian, Latin, Greek, Spanish, English. It had all sorts of stuff. And then it had the Gaharn fragments, the Book of Dyson, the Liber Ivonis, and the Cults des Ghouls. It also had 15 scrolls in various languages. So Reginald grabbed the Liber Ivonis, the Cults des Ghouls, and 3 scrolls. The small ornate chest had some depictions of some strange-looking creatures on it. And then inside it had 2 silver daggers that kind of glimmered in the light. And so Charlie, of course, pocketed both of that. The small stone jar had some like silvery powder in it. So Sancho pocketed that. They also pocketed a bunch of other books. They pocketed the Gaharn fragments and the Book of Dyson. I think they grabbed some more scrolls, and Sancho grabbed like a Spanish book. It wasn't named, it was just a Spanish book. And let's see. I think that was... They didn't look at the artwork. They were like, fuck that, fuck artwork. And I think that was pretty much all they did. And then as they were like, we're running out of time, we gotta get out of here. So Sancho looked at the crates. That was the only thing they didn't really look at. He looked at the crates, and most of them were unmarked. He didn't look in them, he just looked at them, at the sides. Most of them were unmarked except for a couple of them. One said Hofong Imports in Shanghai, China. And another said Randolph Shipping Company in Darwin, Australia. And so he made a mental note of that. And I'm sure Ren made a written note of that. And so they got out of there. Sancho grabbed Maximilian, put him on his shoulders. They got a cab. They went to the hospital. And that was pretty much it. Beautiful, beautiful incursion at the Penhew Foundation. And so the next day was pretty much just a rest and read day. Maximilian, like, I think Charlie only lost like 2 health or something, or 1 health, something like that. So he was fine. He got patched up real quick. Maximilian was at 2 health. And so his first treatment, which was a 2d3, he recovered 2 health. So he's at 4. And so I ruled that, well, I said that, to explain why he recovered so little health, he basically suffered a stroke from that Superman punch. His brain got messed. And so it's going to take a while to treat him. And so we're using the actual rules. I'm not fudging this now. Every week you spend at the hospital, you get 2d3 health back. So, yeah, if he wants to get to full health, worst case scenario, he could be there for another, 6 weeks. Hopefully it's better than that, but you never know. And so they're sitting there, and Charlie's just like, wow, we should just, skip ahead a week or something. And Reginald's like, Ziggy's like, no! And, okay. So, yeah, they pretty much just rested and read. I think Reginald started reading the Cults de Ghouls, and Sancho read his Spanish book. Charlie has no interest in reading any books, and Maximilian was pretty much out. So that was it. That night, the night of the 15th, oh God, Reginald is laying in his bed, and he hears a loud crashing noise downstairs. And so he grabs his gun, and he hears footsteps downstairs. And so the way his apartment and everything is situated above the Steinway Hall, he's got like a clear shot, a clear view to the stairs. And so he just like opens his door and he's got his gun like this down the hallway. And so he hears all sorts of like rummaging noises and breaking noises downstairs. And so he's pondering, he's like, maybe I should make a break for it. I don't know, man. And so he goes to the top of the stairs, and he's still got his gun like this, pointed downstairs. And he hears footsteps approaching. And as soon as like a guy like turns around the corner, he's just boom with his .357 Magnum. And he hits him. He hits him hard. Like, he doesn't kill him, but the dude's gonna need serious medical attention. And so he's just like, you there? He falls to the ground, his blood. And so they're like, oh, he's upstairs, he's got a gun. And he's like, oh shit, how many are there down there? And he never really found out for sure how many there were. And so they grab their buddy and they drag him out of view. And they're like, give it up, Mr. Steinway. Mr. Gavigan knows you broke into the Foundation. Put the gun down and go with us. Come with us. And so, very tense moments for Reginald. He's like, what am I doing? And so he goes back into his room. He props the painting, the magical painting, he props that up against his bed, facing like the door, so they can see it. I think Ziggy believes that, like, as soon as you look at it, you can get sucked in. It takes at least a minute. A minute at the bare minimum. Like, I should specify, I think we've kind of had enough evidence of that at this point, but it takes a minute at the bare minimum of staring at it. So that, it's not like a trap you can just have people, oh, and they get sucked in like Jumanji or something. It doesn't, no, it's a bit more involved than that. But anyways. And then he hides he like throws a chair out the window. And then he hides in the closet, hoping that oh, he jumped out the window, go look. And they do say that. They send one guy to go look. But there's still a couple of them coming down the hallway towards him. And so he's like, fuck it. I'm just going to pull a Han Solo. And so he just like roars and runs out there and just... And so he clips one of them in like the shoulder, but not enough. And so they charge him, and they both have clubs that have like a nail through it. These are deadly, deadly weapons. Like, really painful. And the first one connects. And the first one connects hard. Like, just boom, straight across the skull. He takes like 10 damage or something. I think it was 10. He's at like 3 HP, and so he like crawls back into his office. And he points at the painting, and he's like, your boss will want me alive, I know things. And so the one dude just runs up and clocks him. And so Reginald is out. Not dead, but out. And so he wakes up in a cell. No window, just a metal door in front of him, and he's like chained to the wall. He's like, oh shit. And so he starts like laughing uncontrollably, and he hears, "Pipe down in there!" And he says something in retort, but the guy's like, "Yeah, we'll see what Gavigan wants to do with you. You messed with the Brotherhood now." Oh shit. And so the rest of the day goes by, or what he assumes. There's no light down there, so he has no idea, but he feels like he's been down there a while. He gets some food delivered and stuff. And then finally, in walks Edward Gavigan. Gavigan tells him that he knows that he broke into his foundation and he stole some things, and he would like those things returned. And it was at that point that I was sitting there pondering, I was doing the conversation, I was like, I need to talk to him alone. Like, this is too good of a thing for me to just tell everybody. So we ended the Skype call, and I went into a private Skype call with Ziggy, and I muted the stream entirely. They could not hear a thing. And so Ziggy and I just had this conversation. And I will not say anything here, because I know you bastards would watch this. So that's going to be in Secrets of Role-Making, and I will discuss what all involved in that conversation. It is fascinating, I assure you. The plot thickens. And basically, then yeah, when we came back and got everybody back in, Reginald was back at Steinway Hall. So I'm sure that just kills people. Like, what did they talk about? You'll find out. Okay. So that was like Monday night that Reginald got he was back at Steinway Hall. And so all that really happened that day was Sancho started reading the Gaharn fragments, which was in English. Okay, so February 17th, 1925, Tuesday, Reginald got back into contact with those guys. They didn't know that he got captured. His office, Steinway Hall, they knew that something happened there, and he said that some people broke in to try and steal a piano. So he lied to them. He put out a statement to the company and all that, and he said, "It's fine. I'm fine. I spent yesterday at the hospital. It's fine." He didn't go to the hospital, by the way. He's at like 6 health. But he gets back in contact with the group, and he discusses with Charlie what's going on, and Reginald's like, well, there's still this Tufik thing. We should go to Tufik's shop and see what we can find out. And so they were like, well, they didn't want to leave Maximilian alone, because Charlie remembers the last time they left somebody alone in a hospital. Poor Neil, way back when. Which wasn't even that long ago. I'm sure if I had my sheet, that was probably like, 3 weeks ago? And so they did like a coin flip, and so Charlie Chalk was the one that went with Reginald. So they go down to his spice shop, and they go into the shop. It smells very nice. It's a nice, small, quaint little shop. Spice racks all around, and the guy at the register is a middle-aged Arabic man. He's got one of those the fez, right? That's what it's called. I was trying to think it was a fez. And he's got a big mustache. Oh, welcome. And so they start looking around, and Reginald speaks to Tufik, asking him if he has some personal recommendations for spices. And so Tufik starts going around and pointing out specific ones, and then at one point, Reginald leans in and whispers into his ear. He's like, I think you should take a quick lunch break. The Brotherhood needs some things from you. And so Tufik just stops, and he turns to Reginald and he says, I'm afraid... he's like, I don't think I am the man you think I am. I think you should leave. Or something. He said something like that. But he said, I think you should leave. And so Reginald just was like, he walked out. And Charlie, the player, actually took off his headset, so he didn't hear what the whisper was. He didn't want to know anything, because his character wouldn't hear. He wanted to prevent metagaming. And so he's like, well, what was that all about? What did he say to you? He's like, oh, he said my shop should take a quick lunch break. I think perhaps he intends to rob the place. And so Charlie's like, oh, go talk to him. I'll see what's going on. And so they go outside and they just talk. And Reginald says that he thinks that this guy is part of the cult, this brotherhood. He couldn't remember the name. He said the Order of the Dark Brotherhood, which is just... that's a terrible name for your cult if you've got one. The Order of the Dark Brotherhood. And so he's like, he tells Charlie that this guy he's connected. He's something bad with the cult, and so he probably is not going to trust me at all. But he might still trust you. You should talk to him some more and see what you can find out. And then Reginald just leaves. He gets in his car with Stefan and he just leaves. And so Charlie's like, okay. And so Charlie goes back and he's like, oh, I'm sorry about that dude. And then, okay, he says to him, this was kind of elaborate. Basically, he says that this guy, Steinway, is a thief who goes around and he's only interested in, like, Egyptian artifacts. And he's like a cop or something that's been tailing him. He's been following this or something like it was crazy. And so Tufik's like, well, I don't know what interest he would have in my shop. I just sell spices. And so Charlie's really trying to glean some information out of this guy. Like, you know, what are you hiding, man? What are you... He didn't say that, but that was the intent. It was like, what are you hiding that this guy would be interested in? And eventually he's like, well, I got this artifact you may want to look at. And so he pulls out the scepter, of course. Because that had such a great reaction last time. And so Tufik looks it over and he says, oh, yes, Nyambe, thy power mine. Because everybody can read hieroglyphics. This guy actually can. I'm not making that up. And he says, well, this is interesting, but perhaps you should take it to the Penhew Foundation. They are the expert. Charlie was like, oh, yeah, maybe I should do that. And that was pretty much it. He couldn't get anything out of him. And I'll talk way more about this in Secrets of Rolling and about what really happened there, but he's just like, well, have a nice day. And I think he bought some cumin or something, and Charlie left. Not too interesting. Okay. And so it was the 17th, which was another deadline for Reginald. He's like, oh shit. And so he gets back to Steinway Hall, and he looks up Tufik's number in the phone book, and he calls up Tufik. And this was a big deal. This was like his big climactic moment to end the session. He calls up Tufik and he says, this is the man that was talking to you earlier today, Steinway. And he's like, I'm sorry to have put the pressure on you in your shop like that, but this is really important stuff. I know you're part of the Brotherhood, and he said, I know you don't have any love for the Brotherhood, and Gavigan wants you dead. And he said some other stuff, and Tufik finally responded. He's like, I don't think... what did he say? He's like, I don't think you know who you're speaking to. I am the High Priest of the Brotherhood of the Black Pharaoh. And everybody was just like, oh, shit. And the conversation continued. Again, this is kind of an important one, but I'm fucking it up. Reginald again mentioned that Gavigan is gunning for him or something like that. And Tufik's like, yes, Gavigan and I have our rivalry. He was elected the leader of the Brotherhood, and where I should have been. And so, Reginald was like, I have some artifacts that may be... He's like, I know there's some sides here, and I want to be on the right one, so I have some artifacts that may be of use to you. If you want to come down to my place and we can discuss. Tufek's like, I don't have artifacts of my own. He does. And Reginald's like, information then. I know some stuff and I don't want to share it over the phone. And I'm like, roll a persuade. And he succeeds, and Tufek's like, very well, Mr. Steinway, I will visit your place tonight at 10 o'clock. And click. And sure enough, that night, 10 o'clock, Tufek shows up. And so Reginald takes him upstairs to his apartment. He offers him a drink. Tufek doesn't want any of that. And then he shows him the painting. He mentioned Shipley by name. And Tufek's like, yes, Gavigan bought some of his paintings. And he shows him this special painting, this masterpiece. And Tufek goes over and he looks at it for about a minute. And he says, Reginald said something about how it has, the colors begin to swirl after some amount of time. You have to really look at it. And Tufek's like, yes, I can feel like it's almost pulling me in, but I'm afraid you're going to have to do a bit better than that, Mr. Steinway. And Reginald's just like, oh. And, well, no, I can tell that here. Okay, so after a minute of looking at the painting, it's a power versus power on the resistance table, and it's a 10 on the painting's end. So it's 10 versus whatever your power is. And for every minute longer you look at it, it's another power. So then it would be 11 for 1 minute, or 2 minutes. It'd be 12, then whatever. So on and so forth. Tufek has a power of 20, which again is superhuman. Not natural. And so, after looking at it for 1 minute, it is literally impossible for him to get sucked in. If he had looked at it for 2 minutes, then there's like a 5% chance, and so on and so forth. He would have to gaze at this thing for a long time to get sucked in. So, but even after a minute, even though it automatically failed, he knows, he could feel that it's trying to suck him in. So he automatically knows right away that this guy is trying to trick him. So, he should have blasted him right there, but he didn't. He was curious. And so Reginald's like, oh, well, there is this one other thing then. He goes over to his nightstand, he grabs his revolver, and he's just, he does like the James Bond thing, he whips around. And so he fires, and he misses. The bullet goes out the window. And so Tufek responds with a Mind Blast spell, which hits. And, No! Oh, man. No, it does not go out the window. Oh, man, I'm fucking it up. This was a real big moment. I fucked it up. The first hit, after he does his James Bond thing, he whips around, he rolls a 1. And I'm like, holy shit, man. This guy's about to get headshot right away. That's kind of upsetting. So he rolls this 1. I roll Tufek's dodge, which is 70, by the way, which is insane for this guy to have a 70 dodge. I was like, what? But sure enough, 70 dodge. Like some player made this shit. He failed. He rolled an 87. Or I rolled an 87. So I was like, oh god, roll damage. He rolled very low for damage. It was like 2d8 plus 2d4. He rolled a 9. That's bad. So Tufek got a bullet through the neck, but not a vital or something, just, and he's like, yeah, he goes down to the ground. He's like, yeah! So he casts Mind Blast, which succeeds, and Reginald loses 5 sanity and goes temporarily insane. So he like immediately starts having seizures and shit. And really, this should just take him out completely. Like, he should be done. Like, you don't get to do anything for like 3 hours. But I'm very generous, and I need to stop. But it's okay. It's fine. And so he's like, I let him shoot off another round at a heavy penalty, like minus 50. I shouldn't have let him roll anything, but I let him. And so he fires off around the door, and the bullet goes out the window. And Tufek's like, I have you now. And Reginald is ready to like shoot himself in the head, but he's like, nah, nah, nah. He's like, all right, he's speaking an incantation above you as his hands rattle, and suddenly his body melts and crumbles to the floor. And Reginald's just like, oh, as he's still seizuring. And he hears, out of his eyesight, he hears, that guy was really annoying. Oh, God. And so Reginald tries speaking, but he's still seizuring, so he's just like, it's like, oh, Reginald, you crack me up. He snaps his fingers and the seizures stop. And, oh, there was a Sunday in there. Yeah, the 15th. I just suddenly remembered this, by the way. The 15th, they went to church, Reginald and Sancho, because they're both good Christians. And Sancho had a very pleasant service. A very nice mass. Reginald, on the other hand, was quite confused by the sermon, which involved talking about a number of dark cults and how they commit cannibalism and necromancy and stuff like that, going into vivid detail. It was kind of disturbing. As a complete side note. Okay. So Reginald, stops twitching and tremoring, and he stands up and he's like, oh, God. And so Gulk's like, well, time's ticking, Mr. Steinway, as he taps his wristwatch. And it's 10:20. And Reginald's like, oh, God. And he's still kind of racked from the experience, because his seizures stop, but it's still, he's emotionally, he's drained from all this shit. So he's shambling across, and Gulk just keeps appearing in front of him as he's walking along. Tick-tock, Mr. Steinway. I go, God, what this is nightmare. But he keeps going on. He doesn't shoot himself. He can't bring himself to do it. He keeps soldiering on. It's incredible. And Nyarlathotep is laughing his ass off. Okay. So he gets outside eventually. And he just kind of starts shambling around looking for anybody. And he sees a young woman jogging. He's like, no, I can't do it. So he slumps back in front of Steinway Hall. He slumps against the door. And Gulk sits next to him and he's like, I see what you're doing, Mr. Steinway. I wonder if anybody is going to come around that corner. And Reginald's just like, you already know. Like, yeah, I know. And sure enough, an elderly couple comes around, walking around. Meanwhile, it is the middle of February at 10 o'clock at night, but it's an elderly couple walking. Screw you. And so he shambles to his feet. He's like, oh, God. Oh, young man, are you all right? And he tells them that he had a party or something, and his friends dropped him off here, and he's not feeling great. And they have a little conversation, and he's like, I have some tea inside if you'd like. I'm like, roll persuade. And Ziggy's like, I don't want to succeed on this. He did. I'm like, oh, Felicia, that sounds pleasant. Sure, lead the way in. Nobody that owns Steinway could be a bad person, right? And so he leads them upstairs. He gets them some tea, and they're sitting down, they're enjoying it. And then he mentions he's got a painting, this fine piece. He's like, oh, Felicia used to be an art dealer. And sure, absolutely. And he's like, oh, God. And so he opens it up, and the woman goes over there and starts looking at it. And the man stays there, and he's like, oh, surely you'd like to look at it too. I mean, I implore you. And I'm like, roll a persuade. He's like, God, I don't want to succeed. He does. And so they both go over there, and they look at the fine brush strokes, and they're like, oh, man, this is quite marvelous. Oh, it's like the colors are swirling and rippling. This is amazing. And so I just made very average. They both had 10 power. So after a minute, 50% chance for both of them. The woman succeeded. The man did not. It So the man's like, oh God! It's supposed to be just you suddenly appear in back in time. Like, it's just you're standing there and suddenly you're standing back in time. But I have to make it much worse. Maybe, maybe Golk did that on purpose. He altered the painting, so it's suddenly a very painful transition. So it's just, oh God! Anything to make Reginald feel worse. And so he had to roll sanity. He succeeded again, so he only lost 2. But then she's just like, oh my God, what happened to Henry? What is this? And she's watching, she's seen in the painting as he's getting devoured by serpent people. Oh my God! And so she starts running, trying to get out of the building. And Reginald's just like, oh God. I still can't stop laughing. So he walks up behind her as she gets to the stairs, and he shoves her down. And so he just hears just tumbling and cracking noises and just silence. And he just sees her dead, broken form there of an old lady just killed. He rolled sanity again. He succeeded again, so he lost 2 more sanity. And then he just hears, boy, that was a nasty fall. And Reginald's just like, yes, you have to really watch your step when you get to that age. Yeah, especially when some guy shoves you from behind. And then Reginald's like, well, this is going to be a problem. Golk's like, yeah, it's a problem for you. And so Reginald is like looking over this, and he's like thinking, and like, what can he do with this? Like, how does he clean this shit up, this body? And he's like, Golk, I don't know if I can clean this up. Well, I could clean it up. Yeah, you don't leave a mess. That's right. But question is, what are you going to offer me? Reginald's like, well, you came up with the terms of the last deal, or I came up with the terms of the last deal, so whatever you wish. And so Golk's like, well, you've been through a hectic night tonight, Mr. Steinway, so maybe one of your friends could pay the price. At this point, Charlie put off his headset again. He didn't want to hear. And so Reginald's like, well, I don't think it should be Charlie. He's been through a lot. And Golk's like, I'll decide who it is, who pays the price. I got yelled at really loudly. And even Charlie heard it from like across the room with his headset off. He heard Golk yell at. And I wanted it to be really loud coming from Golk. That was the point. And so Reginald's just like, I'll clean it up. And so he gets like some chef's gloves from the cafeteria, and he like drags the body out and puts it in a rug or some shit, and he just leaves it somewhere. And then he calls Stefan, and he gets a hotel room for the night. And he's just like, I'm not going to be staying in London much longer. Meanwhile, I'm just laughing my ass off this whole time, just like, Nyarlathotep would be. Just too funny, man. Oh, God. Oh, so funny. That was a great ending to a session. Really good. And so yeah, that's where we left off. So Maximilian is still in pretty critical condition. Reginald is in pretty terrible condition, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, and probably spiritually, morally, everything. He's not great. He's basically evil at this point. Charlie has one arm and is not quite sure what's going on. Sancho is in probably the best condition of all of them. Well, he definitely is. And but he's reading the Gaharn fragments, and reading Mythos tomes is kind of the beginning of the end there, so we'll see. Yeah, so it seems like they are not planning on spending much time in London. for much longer. But the question is, is London done with them? We'll see. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, that's what this is. I just tell the events, and that's the events. So you're gonna have to wait for Secrets of Role Mangging to kind of get the nitty gritty about what's going on in the background and what is to come. But yeah, it was a hell of a fun session. Like I said, I'm enjoying DMing this. It's too much fun. Mostly, I gotta say, because of the campaign book. I mean, having everything written out for you and just being able to ad-lib the fun stuff, that's really great. That's always been my biggest problem DMing, is coming up with sessions, you know. And so, it's really great. It's really good. And so, yeah, you know, if any of you out there are ever interested in DMing, you know, just picking up a group and DMing Call of Cthulhu and this campaign, which, if you watch Secrets of Role Mangging, you know what it's all about. I recommend it. It's a hell of a lot of fun. Hopefully me doing this series gives you a lot of ideas if needed, or just some good old entertainment. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, kind of, no, actually not really. I think it's just a good time. This now begins the time where we are going to be switching off week to week. So every other week we'll be doing Call of Cthulhu and this campaign. It's going to continue to be a lot of fun. But on the other weeks, we'll be starting up our D&D campaign. Just like the old days, the original Dungeons and Manggins. Ziggy will be DMing a campaign that I will be playing in. And so there will, of course, be a Role Mangging series for that. But there will not be, of course, a Secrets of Role Mangging for that. So, this was partly just to give, well, Ziggy, you know, enjoys DMing D&D, and I do like to play. I do like to play a lot. It's amazing that I'm enjoying DMing, you know, this stuff as much as I am, and I'm not just like, oh god, I wish I could play something. I am excited to play D&D, but it's really a good time for me in the world of pen and paper games, just because I have a game that I love to DM, and me playing D&D with Ziggy as a DM is, you know, as good as it gets. So it's really great. So that campaign, maybe sometime during the week, I'll put up an episode 0 or something, kind of explaining the backstory of the campaign and our characters and stuff. Maybe that might not be necessary. I don't know. I might have to get some more info from Ziggy. We'll see. It might be a short video. I don't know. But yeah, so that's the plan. We're going to be switching off every other week. Doesn't really make a huge difference as far as role mangging, because it's going to continue every week. But it does mean that this Call of Cthulhu campaign is going to take quite a bit longer. If you play it, you know, every week, it can take a year, so we'll see what happens. But they are progressing, so. Alright, I think that about wraps it up for me for this one. So, my name is Mang. This has been Role Mangging for our Call of Cthulhu campaign. And I'll see you fine folks in a couple of weeks.